A Spider's Dharma. By J.W. Steele. High on the mountain temple of the Tiger's Eye Monastery in Nepal, the venerable Tibetan Master, Lama Zopa-ten paced slowly before us. I sat upright on my yak wool cushion and listened as he continued his discourse on the doctrine of original cause. I felt honored to be among the chelas selected to study under this revered master, yet I had grown weary of hearing the same sermon repeated endlessly for what seemed like ages. The struggle to comprehend the mystery of the original cause, now being expounded on once again, had left me bewildered and exhausted. Nevertheless, I knew I had to stay alert. I'd not yet been able to provide Rinpoche with a suitable answer to prove my understanding of the Zen puzzle, and my responses always crumbled under his scrutiny. I strained to maintain my focus. If I fell asleep during this ordeal, I'd face 10 blows with the Kyosaku. Spiritual indifference is a grave offense in this lamasery, and I had no desire to taste the paddle again. Lama Zopa-ten was an imposing figure, a man of formidable strength. I had once witnessed him lift a full-grown horse completely off the ground. His scarlet robe flowed like a cloud over his robust frame, and his shaven skull was smooth and taut, reflecting light like a beacon. His movements, though swift, were remarkably graceful. At times, it seemed as if beneath his robe there dwelled a spirit made of lightning. Although I would never admit it to anyone, I believed I already understood the enigma of original cause. Just because Zopa-ten found my grasp of this question lacking, it did not mean I was ignorant of the doctrine's essence. If someone drops a pebble on this planet, it will land on the ground. If that person repeats the experiment 1,000,000 times, the same result will follow. This was my understanding of cause and effect. If there was more to it than that, I wasn't interested. Yet we chelas were compelled to endure endless lectures on what seemed to me a subject devoid of depth or significance. I pretended to be engaged as I listened to him speak. In a voice that boomed like an earthquake, he continued with his sermon. O monks of noble birth, if a human being, incarnate on the bardo of becoming, murders another, what is the consequence of this action? Is the murder the victim's reward for a murder they committed in another life? Or did the murder create new karma, which he must face again when the seed of his action bears fruit and falls like a ripe apple from a tree? Does the crime balance the scale of cause and effect? If so, is the murderer free from negative karma for his action? Who among you will answer my question? The chamber remained silent, only the howl of the harsh mountain wind rattling the wooden shutters and hurling pebbles with enough force to kill a man could be heard. Does not one of you 9 hold sacks of pus, dung, and urine have enough bile in his gut to face me? He bellowed. We sat like mummies. No one in their right mind would volunteer to face the formidable Zopa-ten. Bah! Monks today behave as if they were made of sugar. When I was a chela, the lamas struck me so hard they often broke their fists in an effort to capture my attention. Does not even one of you farting windbags know what sustained attention reveals? Silence echoed the lecture hall. Enlightenment. He thundered, slamming his meaty fist down on the lectern. His penetrating eyes surveyed the chamber until they settled on me. You there, Jangbu. I fought the urge to wet my robe. You have a reputation as a smart apple, perhaps you possess the mind to answer the impossible question. He continued to stare at me and I became paralyzed. What seemed like an electric current tingled in my neck. Eventually he removed his gaze, and I felt as though I had been released from a straitjacket. I looked around the chamber. It now seemed as if I were peering down a long tunnel. The monks appeared to be on the other side of the room. I knew Zopa-ten had used his advanced psychic abilities to access my mind. I'd witnessed his magic before. Whenever he used telepathy on me, I emerged from the lesson shaken. Yet, after each demonstration, a significant fragment of understanding fell into place. As I watched the monks at the other end of the room, I noticed a spider climbing up the wall. It continued until it reached the vaulted stone ceiling. For a moment, the spider paused and then began making its way toward me. As it approached, its size increased until it was as large as my head. The spider paused, unfurled a strand of web, and dropped from the ceiling. It was a hideous and menacing creature with a smooth black shell. A red line ran down the center of its thorax, and its large, pointed fangs were bright lemon yellow. It had a long, hirsute tail covered with vicious barbs. The spider dangled before my eyes, grooming its wicked fangs with its front legs. Without warning, it hissed then leapt on my face. I shrieked and brushed it to the floor where it crashed with a distinct thud. It landed on its back and quickly rolled to its legs. The spider attacked, bearing its wicked fangs. It jumped and landed on my robe. I grabbed it by the thorax, desperate to keep it away from my face. We battled for what seemed like an eternity. Unable to penetrate my defenses, the spider bit my finger. A sharp sting pierced my hand and its barbs sank deep into the wound. Its venom burned like fire, blood and toxin oozed from the puncture. My heart raced, and I grew dizzy. I knew this would be a battle to the death. I grabbed the beast with my good hand and ripped it from my finger. One of its mandibles tore from its maw and lodged in my hand, and the spider crashed to the floor. I sprang to my feet, but the spider lifted its other fang and attacked my ankle. In an instant, my mind snapped back to the present. The spider had disappeared, my hand no longer bled, and the other monks seemed oblivious to my crisis. There was no trace that the spider had ever existed. Zopa-ten stood before me, a smug look on his face. So tell me, Jangbu, what lies beyond the fortress of good and evil? My finger tingled, a tiny black sliver protruded from the spot where the spider bit me. I bowed. "Oh venerable sir, will you kindly remove the barb from my finger?" The master glared at the fragment as if it were a treasure. He reached into the bale of his robe and removed the tweezers. He pulled the sliver from my hand, wrapped it in a silk scarf, and placed it back in his robe. Zopa-ten picked up the brass bell sitting on his lectern, rang it 3 times, and announced, "Class dismissed." The hall emptied out as quickly as if he had yelled, "Fire." I felt dumbfounded as I stood alone, awaiting my fate. The master faced me and said, "Close your mouth, boy. Why are you still here?" I felt confused and didn't know how to answer. The priest's face softened. "Jangbu, though you think there is no meaning in the parable of the original cause, you experienced a great example of its teaching today. You answered the challenge, and you didn't even know it." The great Buddha's voice was mellow and filled with compassion. "It is never permitted for a man of pure conscience to wantonly kill living things. A seed has been planted. In time, what you experienced here will sprout in your mind. Now go, or you'll be late for the evening prayers." I stared down at the floor trying to piece together what he said. When I looked up, the master had disappeared. I threw my book bag over my shoulder and followed the sound of the mantra reverberating in the halls. As I ambled down the corridor, I felt clean all the way through. When I approached the door of the meditation hall, a tiny spider scurried across the floor. I stepped over it as gingerly as a cat leaps over a puddle.